This is podcast number 3. Our group is called Team of Tomorrow. We're also group 3. The members are myself, Shayla, Willie, Alex, and Camden. One of the questions for our podcast is explain 5 pieces of feedback you received regarding your innovation that you will be using to make positive changes moving forward. So some of our classmates were worried about the fuel issue because we had kerosene. So we switched that to renewable liquid hydrogen and oxygen fuel. They also asked, what happens if there's an emergency? So we made a manual and an electronic failsafe in case of an emergency. And they asked how far and long the pod can travel, and we kind of changed our pod in the way that, and explained it also, that our pod will only take 6 hours to pretty much go around and orbit the whole Earth. So just in case of running out of fuel, we also have fuel stations in our world in 100 years. So your pod will just instantly go to that and get refueled. They also asked how far the pod can travel. So our whole pod, it essentially will just be able to travel as long and as far as it needs be, but it will have to stop at different stations just in case. If you want to orbit the world 100 times, you're obviously going to have to stop. But technically the pod is going to be able to travel enough distance that there's really not a worry, especially with our fuel stations or battery stations. And I think the huge issue with our pod was definitely people wanted to see multiple seats. So we initially only had our pod as a 1-seater, and we had a modular system where you could connect, but you guys wouldn't technically be together. We have definitely changed that, where we have a pod that is a 3-seater and an 8-seater, so it can fit a whole family. That will make the whole situation more comfortable. The second question is explain 5 pieces of feedback you received regarding your Kickstarter video that you will be using to make positive changes moving forward. Now, to me, this question is just about our pretty much how our Kickstarter video is going to look. And even hearing the feedback from our classmates and even reading the papers that we received, we really didn't get a whole bunch of feedback on our Kickstarter video and the look and how it's all going to work out. It was mainly just what the pod is and, going into the depths of how is our pod really going to work and such. So with our Kickstarter video, I did read 2 of the papers that they didn't understand why it was going to be dark and dramatic. It should be bright. With that being said, I think that maybe they didn't understand the whole concept. Technically our pod's able to go into space, so I felt dark and dramatic would be more acceptable, and especially with being able to sell it, people are more intrigued by more dramatic things. So I feel they'd pay more attention to our Kickstarter video. But we're still looking at that. And it may not even end up dark because, there's a lot of light because it is summer. So I guess we'll just kind of see how that goes. The third question is, please make connections to the technology in Parapius and how they integrate into the society in the short story. Oh man, I just have to say that reading was really intriguing. I really enjoyed it. So some of the technologies they had was they regulate themselves, which is like they can give themselves stimulants for like their hormones or like the way they're feeling. And I guess it kind of fits into the story due to like there's so many, like it's like pretty much the whole galaxy is just a place where people live. I mean, you have them, I'm assuming, from Mars that are Martians, and people from Earth, and it's just a whole different concept. So I mean, not understanding where, because you haven't lived like on Earth or Mars, not understanding where those people come from. So I think that the fact that they can regulate themselves or even read the heart rates or the hormones fits into the society and the story, because I mean, it'd kind of be confusing. Everybody's different, like every world is different. And then, do these technologies pose any ethical concerns? Most definitely. I mean, if you can regulate your feelings pretty much, and you can also read the heart rate and the hormones, and you can pretty much just be able to read anything about anybody. I mean, the privacy that you would have would be like, you literally would not have any privacy. So I think that causes for ethical concerns. Or as Willie put it, he's like, the stimulants are an ethical concern because they allow people to push others past their natural abilities, which is so true. Because if someone is not regulating and reading someone else's like hormones, you pushing their natural abilities to just kind of like hide who they are, because you already know that person can know how and pretty much what you feel, how you think. So the next question, do these ethical concerns occur because of object or thing relationships? Taking the stimulants or regulating becomes a thing because people become less of a typical person as they exceed themselves and others and promote taking stimulants more and more often. Willie threw out a question. Do people then have a mental limit that stimulants can exceed? This is what makes the stimulant unpredictable. And he also, with the next question, consider thing theory and the anxiety that occurs when an object becomes a thing. Is the anxiety something that also parallels ethical concerns? So with the stimulants being so unpredictable, it definitely causes anxiety among others, which I previously just addressed. I mean, having someone be able to read your hormones or know every single thing about you like instantly would definitely cause a lot of anxiety, especially if one, you can't do it, or two, just like sitting there and like talking to someone, they're like, oh, well, they know if I hate them, well, they know if I like them. And I feel like that causes big ethical concern. I think we as humans need to be able to have like a little bit of our privacy and just our thoughts to ourselves, and I think it's a big issue if that was ever to happen. So with that being said, this is podcast number 3, and I think that pretty much covers everything.